This is a video that is intended to help us connect with this full moon in Sagittarius. Okay, so what I want to do in this video today with you is help you connect with the transits that we're currently dealing with right now. So this full moon, I want to help you connect to it. Then I want to help you understand the mechanics behind this full moon, so that when you've connected to it and you've got these mechanics, you can then activate what I would call agency and an awakening experience. In other words, your ability to be able to then interact with, right, be a part of, embody the evolutionary potential that is present or salient right now. Okay, this is the question, or it's not even a question, this is the trajectory that I want to walk with you today. This to me is the full moon in Sagittarius, and also the relationship back to the new moon in Taurus. Okay, so of course, as you know, new and full moons work in a cycle. We are now at the full moon phase, and this all initiated itself with the new moon. Okay, so this here, this kind of path, this trajectory, this word, these arrowings, this is what I'm going to use as a model to help us understand the depth of this full moon in Sagittarius. And it's called meta-optimization through relevance realization. Okay. Some of you, if you may be aware of this person by the name of John Vervaeke, he has spent a great deal of his time, and this is words that he's used. Relevance realization is his words, and this is the process that explains Gemini, Sagittarius, all of the themes that are in the chart today. So this is the guiding principle that I'm going to use to help us connect with this full moon in Sagittarius. Meta-optimization through relevance realization. So remember, meta-optimization through relevance realization. That is the key framing that is going to be used for this chart, and I'm going to help us kind of digest this and show what this is about. Okay, so first thing that I want to address in this chart over here is, of course, the full moon. So there's that 13 degrees Sagittarius moon in relation to the sun sign that is in 13 degrees of Gemini. Okay, this axis, for those of you that are kind of new to astrology or diving into the way that I work, right? This axis, Gemini Sag, is another way of saying Gemini Sag is how you pay attention to things that are in your environment, objects. Okay, how your eyes and your brain and your ears and all of your senses. So the senses piece is Taurus. The Gemini piece is how you label the things that are in your environment, and also how you are consistently paying attention to the objects and the patterns that are in your world. Okay, so the sensory perception is this Taurus perspective, right? So you feel with your senses, you can see, etc. But once you have been exposed to things around you, right, they need to be processed. They need to come into a kind of state of organization. And that's how we then form perception in reality. So forming perception being the word associated with Sagittarius, forming perception is the process of Gemini interfacing with Virgo and then Virgo coming into Sag, so that then you form perception. So how can you come back to this place and understand what I'm talking about? So if you want, pause the video now, unless you're on the live stream, and I want you to just kind of take a note, just take a look around you. And notice how the moment that you start to look around you, you'll see, if you're paying attention to your brain, right, objects that have association in your life. So whatever objects you have within your life right now, just scan your environment, just pay attention. You'll notice that not everything is the same. They're unique. There are different objects within your environment that have different categories and your relationship to what they are towards you, as well as what they are and how they function within your life. Okay, this is a very important piece. Okay, in order to break down and answer the question, what is meta optimization through relevance realization, this piece, you've got to play with me here, okay? So I want you to kind of really pay attention to what objects are around you and just notice, like for a second, what value do they hold within your life and why are they there? Okay, that's an important question. Why are they there? And I don't mean as in why they're there because I put them there. I mean, think deeper. I mean, as in, why are they there? Like if there's car keys over there, right? Why is the car in your life? Reflect on that process. Now the simplicity here is, well, you know, I just use it to drive. Yeah, okay, fine, but go deeper. Like what does it reflect to you? What does it render to you? And when you just start dropping into and connecting with the sort of meta story that surrounds objects that you perceive in your reality, okay? So you're kind of becoming abstract when you're dropping into the object that's there by seeing its connection in your life to not just some keys that are there, but to what they represent, how they play out within your life, you know, what is the function of the role, what do they do for you? So a car, for instance, might give you freedom. That freedom allows you to XYZ, right? The car represents travel, so get you from A to B. So if you look around you, you can actually start to see that each object around you has a meta story to it, a meta experience, right? That's beyond its physical shape that's in your life. Okay, so now that you have this connection, this kind of perception of how you're seeing objects within your life, that the platonic perspective, meaning just the object itself, is there, but now you've dropped into perception, as in depth perception. You've allowed yourself to see the object in more of its function and uses in a non-linear sort of abstract way. Okay, very important to have that. So that is the Gemini Sagittarius axis. That's how it plays out archetypically. So whenever you're studying or observing these planetary systems, and they are in Sagittarius Gemini, you're on the surface, we're like, okay, it's all travel and it's optimized. Yeah, that's true. But what it actually is, when we study reality itself, this is the mechanism behind our capacity to develop perception. Okay, and the Sagittarius piece is peripheral perception. So it's not just sort of what's in front of you and what's salient and what you can pay attention to, but what is expansive and on the peripheral. Right? You may be feeling stressed or have this anxiety or stress within your life, but immediately in front of you, there doesn't seem to be anything that's like that. But if you drop into depth perception, as in become more peripheral, you may notice that, say, the car that you have needs to be fixed, and that's giving stress, and it's laying dormant in the background there, but the moment that you bring your attention to it, it comes into the forefront, and that stress is present. Yeah? So that's what I'm referring to here. The Sagittarius Gemini is the ability to have our perception go from something that's single and right in front of you to dropping into depth. Yeah? Okay. So that's kind of a way of really connecting with transits. If you want to understand transits within your life, that is how these things work. Okay. So Gemini Sagittarius axis, right? There's this full moon, Gemini, and it's present within ourselves right now. So if you then move over to this Jupiter aspect here, let's look at the Jupiter aspect. So to me, this is important. Jupiter in connection with Pluto. Okay, there's that square that's taking place. Notice Pluto retrograde, notice Pluto in Aquarius, notice this North Node conjunction, and you can see here that these two have just crossed each other in Taurus, okay? Now, pause. Just last week or the week before, I did a video on talking about what this symbolizes and what this symbolizes. If you haven't watched that, go check that out over there, because I talk a lot about the kind of way that this pattern is playing out. All right. So this pattern is very important at the moment. This very, very, very important pattern. Okay. You can even see here that recently we've had Mars that has been connecting to it. It still is. And now you've got Venus that's here, and it's also connecting to it. Okay, even though it doesn't show it on this program, there's a natural square between Venus and the nodes, and Venus in opposition to Pluto. Okay, that's a big deal. So Venus in opposition to Pluto, Mars there alongside this, you know, connecting to Pluto as well. This is going to be a big part of meta optimization. Oh my God, meta optimization through the relevance realization. Okay, this pattern you have here. So this is the pattern that I want you to sort of like hold in your mind when we're trying to resolve something regarding the chart. So that's important. Okay, there's a few other things that are taking place, like for instance, Saturn in Pisces in relation to Leo, like Mars and Leo there. That in conjunct, very, very important in the context of how I'm going to show this with you. Okay, this is the piece that is relevant realization. That in conjunct is what's causing there need to be that is causing that. This is the meta optimization piece. Okay. All right. So Sagittarius, Gemini, Pluto squaring Jupiter. We've got all of this stuff over here as well, squaring the nodes. And as I said before in one of the other videos, there's a polarity that's existing, right? There's one part of us that feels that sense of stuckness and limitation and wanting to desperately get out of that space. And then there's another place that feels like it's on the horizon, and it's like you're leaning towards it, like you're leaning towards the possibility of a new way of relating to yourself. These two patterns are present with us. That's the squares to the nodes. This is the astrology chart at the moment, okay? So there it is. You can see it with your left brain. Gemini, you can see the pattern. There's a full moon. There is a Mars in conjunct the Saturn, which is important. The Venus is in opposition to Pluto. The Mars is also squaring the nodes. The Venus is also squaring the nodes. You can see there. And again, you also see this Mars-Venus that is squaring this here, okay? So very, very important, these patterns. This, and this, okay? And then, of course, just that pattern there. All right. So if we come back to this, and we say meta optimization through relevance realization. Okay. All right. So I'm going to attempt to, through this process, walk us through the emotional journey that comes along with this pattern. Okay. So firstly, loss of self. Okay. Loss of self. And in the astrology chart, where you see this is Mars there in opposition to Pluto. That's just recently happened. This Venus in Cancer in opposition to Pluto. Okay. So these two patterns, like Mars initiated something and Venus is going to come along and say, okay, now it's time to make changes relative to this, what has been initiated. Okay. What has been initiated is this feeling of wanting to go beyond. And Venus is coming along and it's saying to you, okay, kiddo, if you want to come along, if you want to move to that next step, what values, what emotional attachments do you have? What identities, past set connections to that past are you carrying with you that need to be processed through so that you can then take action and continue to go moving forward? So it's like, if you want to move forward with something, this T-square is saying this. It's saying, if you want to move forward, you're only allowed to carry 3 bricks with you, okay? Because there is a sort of like brick limit as to how many bricks you can carry with you into this new future. And you're sitting with like 12. And you're like, huh, what do I need to get rid of? Okay? So the meta optimization is the capacity to decide what of those bricks that you don't want to carry with you. Okay? So that when you move through the portal of transition into this new space that you want to live within, and you bring the 3 bricks with you, what you have left behind is a process of understanding what's relevant and what's not. So relevant realization. Okay? And this is the chart that's helping us do this. So yeah, do you see that there? Okay, that's the Venus opposed Pluto. That's the relevant realization. And then again, the meta optimization is through this. Okay, value structure. So let's start off with this slide here. Again, loss of self. What do I mean by this? Okay, well, this is what I mean. So up until now, okay, we have been living in a world that has for us internally been a place that we could say, oh, this feels familiar, okay? And within the context of this world that we've been living within, this familiarity, this sense of connection, has created a feedback within our body to say, okay, everything's cool, I'm doing this over here, this is how I've always seen myself. And so we're kind of moving along, and in this sense of like, what habits do you have? What rituals do you have? What behaviorisms do you have in this world, okay, that consistently keeps on saying, this is who I am, this is my life, this is my sort of way of doing things, etc. Okay, so it's like you come back to a place of safety within yourself, a sanctuary within yourself, and within that place, there is a feeling of attachment, there's a feeling of connection, there's a feeling of belonging somewhere, whatever that is. And there are frames, okay, there are frames that allow us to hold the perspective of our lives, okay? So imagine here that if we go back to what I was talking about with metacognition, saying there's an object in your life, and that object, if we sink deeper into the meta dynamics around it, we can see it's not just an object, it's actually something a lot bigger within it takes up space in our life, it is part of our identity, okay? So I want you to do the same here. I want you to think about your life as its totality, that there's a whole range of patterns and frames that give you or reflect to you a sense of identity as well as a sense of self. And for the most part, this has just been, how you've been, right? Now, you bring these transits in, and Pluto comes along into Aquarius and says, this feels like a need for revolution. There needs to be something that has to change. And not even so much as so as that it has to change. It's more along the lines of Pluto in Aquarius comes along and says, hey, by the way, all of these patterns and frameworks and perception definitions that you have, the way that you've identified your life and how you've lived, I want to take all of it and I just want to kind of like throw it upside down. And what you feel, and what I feel at a more sort of like conscious, salient level is, I'm really starting to get agitated or not feeling connected to these things anymore in life. I'm noticing that doesn't seem to have the meaning it does anymore. That doesn't seem to bring me the same value or the same experience anymore. And so now what's happening, right, with this kind of disruption that Pluto and the squaring the nodes is coming in, is that it's bringing this agitation, right? Well, most of us will feel this agitation, this need for something more, this need for something different, and it brings it to the surface like that. And you're like, I want to align with this process. I feel that there is a possibility for something new that I can do with my life. I don't know what that is yet. This is like going back like 2.5, 3 weeks, right? Even longer. But I would say 2.5 to 3 weeks has really been the moment where a lot of this has become more intensified. Where it's been more present with us. We can feel it within our lives, right? And so now we're starting to kind of like act on it. This is when Jupiter entered Taurus and aligned with the North Node, right? And that's when that video was created, right? We'd all feel this possibility that something's on the horizon for us, but it feels there at the moment. But these transits have been poking and prodding at the underlying attachments, this meta connection to your life, and it's been saying this is becoming irrelevant. That's what Aquarius does. It makes things irrelevant by accelerating our perception of it, okay? All right, so you're following me so far, right? So we have this world, we have our sort of customs and identities, we feel safe within it, this is who we are, it gives us a sense of identity, and then all of a sudden these transits come along and goes, and in that metaphysics space, it kind of disrupts everything. And it turns things on around, and it says to you, hey, feeling like there's something new that's on the horizon, but you know, you don't know what it is yet. You're just kind of like responding to something new. Okay, so loss of self. Now, what happens when something disruptive comes along and changes or throws up the experience of continuity and consistency and familiarity and ritual? Every single day I take my dog out for a walk and I do this, and then I come home and I do that, and or I eat my food like this, and then all of a sudden something comes along, disrupts it, and your whole entire processing capacity, your perception if things starts to get disturbed and it freaks you out. Most people then turn to astrology in that moment because they need to restabilize the frames, right, and not process the metacognition that's actually happening deep in the surface. That's what I do. That's what this work is about. It's the capacity to look there instead of readjusting the frames here. This will automatically sort itself out. But the loss of self will lead to this. Okay, feeling displaced, feeling alienated, feeling foreign, in a foreign territory, in something different, right? There is an exile that comes along with this, so that it leads to this experience of feeling displaced. And this is very disorientating for a lot of people. And this kind of world that we're kind of presently moving through right now is rendering a range of these types of emotions: displacement, a feeling of not belonging anymore, a disconnect, a sense of, like I said, an exile, a necessary desire to want to exile from an environment, to move out of. Okay. So this is an important slide because for most of us, this place creates stress within ourselves that will lead to, hopefully, the ability to find a new self, right? To explore a new self. But this is where this transit, these squares to the nodes, become activated. Because what renders the experience of loss of self that leads to feeling in a foreign territory, that's the North Node. That's the North Node in Jupiter and Taurus and Mercury. It's a complete new environment. But you don't feel in that new environment. I mean, it's not even there yet. It's still on the kind of like the edges of reality. For most people, we're just feeling this new kind of energy moving forward like that. That's the Pluto in Aquarius. But now it's going to retrograde, and so it's going to go back again. This is why this is such an important video, because in order for you to be able to successfully navigate the experience of Pluto retrograding so that it prepares you for Pluto direct, you need to be able to understand this piece here. That's what we're leading into. We're leading into grieving the past identities that once held meaning, purpose, and recognition for us. In other words, what had relevance. Okay, so in this place of loss of self, all of our relevance disappears, all of our sense of connection, our purpose. And we lead into what Vervaeke calls, which he's labeling as a meaning crisis. But in here, for most of us living, it is literally our sense of identity connected with what is relevant that is now becoming outdated or has become outdated relative to the Pluto square. And now we're sitting in this kind of weird space where between what was relevant but now is not relevant and so absent, and this place that feels like, okay, I'm moving in that direction, but I'm so foreign to it. I feel displaced within there. I'm in exile. Who am I in that new space? It feels uncertain. It's uncharted territory, right? And for a lot of other people, that reality doesn't even feel as if it's present. It's completely absent, in the sense that there is a foreign place. This is the byproduct of this Pluto square, is that it will accelerate people out of comfort into discomfort, and then in that space they will feel displaced, exiled, loss of purpose, connection, loss of meaning, rendering a complete crisis within themselves, right? Because now all of a sudden the depth perception, Sagittarius, Gemini, the meaning that you give your life, that's gone with this. So some of you will go, okay, I see meaning, I can align with that process, I don't know what it is yet. Others will go, I have no meaning. This is kind of the binary that takes place, right? That's what this Pluto square is doing. That's why it's such a huge thing, and it's happening at that meta level. Okay, so displaced, how do we process? Well, we have to go back and recognize that the past patterns of identity were, at the time, who you were, what you were. You were conditioned by what your environment shared with you. But now, as Pluto opens up Pandora's box and says, hey, by the way, everything that has been there has become outdated, and there's a new opportunity to move in a new direction. Somebody said to me, okay, they're having the south node of a Saturn in kind of Libra stuff. And I was like, yeah, you're literally coming through a time where you're going to watch society go through a complete shift in identity, and you along with it, right? So Displaced is the Pluto opposed Venus. That Venus and that Pluto, oh sorry, let me just go to here. That Pluto opposed Venus that's sitting here, the Pluto opposed Mars, that for you has rendered an experience, has brought you closer to reality, the change that is needed to be made in your life. So Mars created that push, now Venus is coming along, and what Venus is saying to you is this, it's saying, in order for you to move forward into this new space, you need to work on your inner capacity for self-recognition, self-reliance, and an internalized sense of you can manage your resources and understand your resources and be attuned to resources in a self-sufficient way. It doesn't mean that you cannot share and co-create. It means if you're going to take that leap into that new direction, bring with you the capacity for trusting your own connection to self, right? Meta optimization is the capacity to recognize what is actually driving you to go, this is what's valuable and this is not, okay? Relevance realization is the ability to recognize within yourself what is actually relevant for you, what is internal within yourself, and then when you fuse the two together, you're now driving your choices consciously, okay? So this is the piece with the Jupiter in a square to Pluto, and also this Jupiter full moon, or the Sagittarius full moon. It is prompting us to look at what drives your depth perception and how that then establishes and defines your perception of what matters. What's important to you in a very simple way. What's important to you? And how do you become connected to that which is important? That's what the Mars in its connection to Saturn's about. The inconjunct that's happening there between Mars and Saturn is both a binary of the loss of self, the fading irrelevancy of your purpose and feeling of destiny and meaning in your life, and simultaneously the opportunity to start observing what is presently real, alive, and exciting for you. So what is relevant within the context of your perception versus what is fading into the depths of your unconscious that is no longer relevant anymore. That pattern will lead you to then be able to resolve the square to the node. And part of that pattern is asking yourself, where do I still have placed external securities, emotional securities that drive me to make choices from a place of fear and more of a kind of like ego salient level versus what's driving me behind at my soul level. So what is exciting you? What is igniting you right now? Okay, that's the piece here, and you want to be able to connect with that deep, more meta state so that it can inform your capacity to perceive reality. Then, by informing that, you can move forward and be in alignment with your truth. In other words, to become aligned with your truth is the ability to drive your sense of perception, not from what's right here in front of you and all of the things that could stress you, but actually what is your deep belief about the way that you perceive reality. Which is why part of the Pluto square is saying, hey, if you want to come into this new space, this new dimension, you have to not bring bricks with you that say, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm too afraid of that. It's like there's no more excuses. If you want to step into that space, you can't bring parts of yourself that are conditioned by belief systems that make you feel inferior or don't trust yourself. You have to take the attitude moving forward with this whole entire schism that says, I may not know how to do it, but I can still learn, I can still inquire, I can still grow, I can still expand, I can still reach out and find where that information exists, assimilate it within yourself, and then move forward with that. That's the Venus opposed Pluto. You can either feel completely at odds with this process and go like, I can't do this, or you can do the Pluto Venus opposition and say you have to examine the underlying core attachments that render you sort of connected to your fear-based process. You have to address them. You have to process through them, and then you have to step into and lead into paying attention to what is actually driving you at a deeper level. So where are your values? What's really What do you really value? And you have to bring more of that into your presence, more of that into your salient experience. So this is kind of like the capacity to manifest what you want within your existence by driving your reality not from the more fear-based sense of identity, but more from the deep intuitive truth that you know is within you. Right? That's the beauty, that's the capacity for this chart. And this chart is asking you to address that, what attachments you have that are keeping you, like I said, in a more sort of shadow state. That's your work, that's our work. And part of the relevance realization is to pay attention to what's relevant and within your excitement versus that which is not. That's what drives a deeper meta-optimization. If you're allowing yourself to be driven by the process of your instincts saying, hey, I really want connection, that's what I value, that's what I drive for, and I'm going to start making choices in alignment with that. But you may sacrifice connection for a perception of something else that you think you need, but that's driven by a shadow perspective or an idea of yourself that's not really who you are. And that's where you need to do this work so that you can become more in alignment with your actual value structure. So if I come back to my slide over here and we move out of this place of being displaced, which is an inability to, or it's a struggle to feel safe in an environment that feels foreign to you, ultimately. And a lot of people feel foreign in this place. So if we go down here, the attune to the self. Part of the meta-optimization is the capacity to attune to self. So this requires you to be able to, at least within a day, spend 10 to 15 minutes, or maybe like 10 minutes every 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is, where you stop, you slow down, Taurus, and you come back to sensations and experiences that you've been having. You process and acknowledge that you actually exist, right? The science behind this process is to bring into focus a presence about yourself and to actually connect with that. So the attunement to the self is a necessary step. That's the Saturn in conjunct Mars in the chart. There must be the ability to connect with relevance. And when you understand what is relevant for you, not within the bigger scopes thing, it's just what's real in front of you right now. And you realize that, you can start feeding that step. And that is attuning to the self. So step one was initiated into a loss of self, which is the old frameworks and ideas that we used to live by. Then we stepped into a space of complete like foreignness, well, I'm doing something completely new for the first time. Yeah, we all are in some way, shape or form. And in other people, they don't even know that that's what's happening. They're just feeling displaced. We're in new territory. In that new territory, the answer to the question is spending more time attuning to a deeper self. And you do that by paying attention to the meta states of yourself. And you bring those meta states into the physical. In other words, think of it as like you're like the abstract space around you, and you want to take your attention and pay more attention to your beliefs, pay more attention to the words you use, pay more attention to what's driving the person that's really in what you feel. So even think of it in the sense where you can just take a finger and like put it in front of your nose, just like 30 centimeters in front of your nose, and just pay attention to that single point, and think of it as bringing my beliefs into that single point, into focus, and then through that, reflecting on what those beliefs are telling you and how they're driving your perception. Because you want to optimize that relationship between the deep, abstract, nonlinear space, which we talked about with the car keys, right? It's not just car keys, it's freedom, it's the ability to do this, there's so much more. You want to bring that to the forefront and you want to become more conscious of that. That's the attunement to the self. Okay. From there, it will start rendering a feedback loop in your life. That feedback loop will ultimately develop a new sense of identity. Over time, you will start to learn to connect with this self over your unconscious self that is just driving the show. So it's about becoming conscious. So you want to be able to now, from this place over here, start having your future self driving the place, future-driven self. So to step into the Jupiter on the North Node, in the Taurus piece, okay, you all know from the previous video, each and every one of you, I want you to connect with, I want you to try connect with, what is that new landscape that's in front of you right now? Okay, what's that new landscape that's in front of you right now? You want to optimize the belief structure that drives you to connect with that new landscape while simultaneously grieving the old self as something that you can't bring into the future, but it got you to the place that you're at right now. As you grieve that process and you let it go and say, hey, this is who I was, this is no longer who I am, and I recognize that what was driving me was maybe an unconscious desire for blah, 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 but I no longer want to be driven by that perception. I'm working through that perception, and then as I free it, I'm now creating more space for something new to come in that is aligned with the deeper self, right? So you're optimizing your sense of direction through understanding what is relevant, and also at the same time allowing what is not relevant to pass back into the distance. Yeah? Okay, so it's kind of the potential that is held within this new moon chart here. So the last question, or last thing I want to present you is, how do we do that? Okay, well, we need to do it through symbol. Okay, so in this image over here, it's not so much these symbols as much as symbols hold Gemini functions, because we all see yin yang, we all see the lotus flower, we all see the caduceus, right? But we know that the yin yang symbol, right, holds meta story to it. Just for a moment, just pay attention to what comes flooding into your worldview the moment that you see that symbol. Pay attention to that, right? Pay attention to how much information comes right into the forefront of your reality the moment that you see that yin yang symbol. Okay, there's a whole entire meta world that is now present there. Now, let's say you allowed all of that context, all of those things, that piece of information, for one day to drive your decisions. So you may come up with a challenge in the early morning, and you know that, in one perception, the yin yang can represent the relationship between light and dark, shadow and non-shadow, or it can be whole, whatever. Now, take all that meta stuff and now feel into how that information can drive your sense of identity to resolve that problem. That is, in fact, what astrology does, right? In one context, it's a frame that allows us to take that meta stuff and bring it into the forefront so that it helps us make sense of the way that we experience reality. So my question to you now is, as you've connected to that, we're going to do something here, okay? And this is actually, I don't know if many of you know about this yet, but the Evolutionary Astrology Immersion that's coming out super soon, this is kind of where we're going with this, right? I want you to come into a symbol of what that future space feels like, right? So each and every one of you, I'm sure, maybe some of you don't, that's okay, it's fine. But that's why you need to do more of that relevance realization. It's like, what am I paying attention to that is really relevant and real for me right now? And if it's hidden, then I need to start giving more permission for those things to come up so I can start to give more attention to them. The more attention I give to it, the more I can start to drive a sense of identity that's in alignment with what's relevant. So what you want to ask yourself right now, step into as reflectors, first, what does that future space feel like? Where is it? What does that represent to you? Where is that within your life? Okay. Now, this is obviously not something you can do right now completely, but I encourage you to drop back and feel and perceive what types of symbols you can attune to that will help you embody the agency needed to step into that new space. Okay, so symbols, some form of symbol that can be in this extent. Do you want to be a hero? You want to live the hero arc that allows you to cross into the threshold? Do you want to, what is the model? What is the symbol that represents the future for you? Right? And think about that. Feel into that process. Allow yourself to drop into that. Maybe it takes like a week to come up with that. That's okay. But ultimately, if you really are able to capture that symbol, you want to be able to then drop into relevance realization, which is what is really relevant within the context of your life, and how are you deciding what's relevant within your life? What are you prioritizing? What is the priorities that you give in a day that allows your sense of identity to say, yes, I'm in alignment with truth, or I'm not. And you'll start to notice there's a kind of schism between things that go, versus things that are like, I wish, right? Feel into what I wish sounds like, and then even ask yourself the question, what types of beliefs do I hold around the I wish? You may say, I wish I could have this, but it's, I can't do this. Why? Challenge the why, challenge the belief structure, the metaphysics behind that I wish, to break it down so that you can then attune to a sense of truth that's more in alignment with your ability to feel that reality and to live it, as opposed to the one that is sort of keeping you stuck in old frameworks. Because the idea of stepping into something that's feeling like you're feeling exiled, or you're stepping into a displaced place, can be like, oh, I don't want to do that, so let me just keep my frames together in this way. But that Pluto is not having any of it. This is why it's Pluto square the nodes. It's like, this is the end of the line. Those frames are being collapsed. All I'm doing over here is simply just helping you kind of connect with how to navigate as these frames collapse, a perception that you can use that's a connection to something deeper within yourself that can drive you and your instincts so that you have agency. So like I said, right, you want to cultivate a symbol that represents everything, the belief systems, the perception, the way that you communicate it, the action, what it embodies, the values. That was the Pluto opposed Venus, right? What values do you align with that are relevant for you, that you feel relevant, that excite you, that drive your perception, and you want to kind of let that be a symbol that you are in union with. So this is where I'm going to end this conversation right now, right? Ultimately, the symbol represents a relationship to that which is the future, so you can project imagination into it. That's the Saturn-Neptune piece, right? All in Pisces over there. Can I project onto that a reality, and then from that, form a relationship to that, so I can be in communion with that, of the part of me that is in that reality, and the part of me that's moving towards it. That's the meta-optimization. It's the capacity to see that space over here, and then allow your sense of relevance in the moment to prioritize that story over the one that you've been living in. Yeah? Okay, cool. So that's where I'm going to end that over there. I hope that kind of dropped into something deeper. I know there was a lot of information there. So always come back and watch this video. You can always write in the comment section questions to me that I can help maybe attune to, or maybe you're already doing this. I'm curious. Okay.